we need to detox from the negative words. It's almost like if you stop saying life is hard, you're almost going to have no choice than to say life is easy.
Did you write this book for any particular type of people?
I wanted to make a book that really dumbed down a lot of the scientific kind of jargon. Out of the biggest chaos in the world, which was the Big Bang, the universe was created. So essentially, we come from chaos. So we have to let things have their chaotic process because the order will come from it.
Do me a favor. Just shut the up. I'm kidding, not kidding. That's the name of the book we are going to discuss today, written by author Jorge Perez, who is one of my dear friends. I'm shamelessly plugging the book. He offers such wisdom through deep experiences. He wrote this book with the catalyst of losing both his parents. He's been on the podcast twice discussing those losses. So this episode is a little less deathy, even though it's inspired by grief and loss. He wrote this book talking about epigenetics. He's talking about the quantum field and anything that comes with that, but really focus on the power of our word, how we speak to each other, how we speak to ourselves, and how it affects our lives. And he offers some very simple methods on how to get through this. We'll talk about it in the episode. And of course, if you like this episode and you like Jorge, the link will be in the show notes for you to consider purchasing this book. I love this man. Again, he'll probably be on the podcast another time in the near future. And I think it's a really important thing that he's doing, writing a book like this, offering very layman's terms on steps you can take today to make your life a little bit better and get through this world, because we all know it can be tricky, and tricky is going to be a key word you're going to hear us talking about today. So as usual, I will stop talking and I will shut the F up with the theme of this book, and let's get to the episode. But I lied before we do. Hope you consider joining the Patreon, support the show. Please write a review. Whatever you can do means a lot. If you have been a loyal listener, I appreciate it. If you're new to the show, my name's David. This is Detox. All right, this is your third time here.
Yeah.
Why are you back?
Are we on?
Yeah, we're on. We'll start whenever we start, but you're here for the third time. It's always good to have you here.
Thank you, David. I love being here with you. I'm so happy I'm here, and it's not because anyone died. I don't think there's anyone left.
I was going to say, that's a relief, and I'm not sure how many checkpoints you have left to even go through that again, so thank God.
No, well, I kind of gave birth to a book. Which is, oh my God, it's right here.
Oh, it's right next to you? So weird.
The Shut the Fuck Up Method. Silence your way to the life of your dreams. And it's so funny when you show anybody that you did a book, it's almost like they congratulate you like you gave birth. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, I'm so proud of you. Yeah. So this is the closest. We'll see.
Is it as painful? Not that you would know?
Yeah, it's very painful. It's a lot of editing and pushing words. It was an amazing process. It took, I feel like I've had this book in me for 20 years, but it took like about 6 months. It was fast. And, I've been here before, as you know. Mm-hmm. And I think the birth of this book was obviously both my parents, they passed from cancer. My dad was 2019 from leukemia. I was a stem cell donor. And my mom was 2022, breast cancer metastasized. And I, once she died, then I started really thinking about genetically what that means, right? For me and my sister. And I took a deep dive on the study of epigenetics, which is how we metabolize stress and the effects of stress, especially in any kind of predisposition disease, And after that deep dive, I learned stuff like, genetic predispositions are like Christmas lights. You can have Christmas lights in your house, but if you don't light them, it's like you don't have them. And what lights up our genetic predispositions is stress, being in an abusive state of fight or flight. Fight or flight is great when you need to get stuff done, right? Like you need to clean your room, you need to prepare for a presentation, but studies are showing that people are 70% of their lives in fight or flight, and that's not sustainable for the human body, and which is, your immune system goes down, you go on high alert, and eventually, if you overdo it, it's almost like if you're driving on second gear for like 7 hours, your body can't take it, won't take it. So yeah, I kind of got into that stuff. I got into some quantum studies and it was all mainly through Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I work with. And then it kind of hit me, man. I was in one of the retreats and I started kind of hearing about how he he explains how in the quantum, you as the observer, when you put attention in something and you call it out, like you say, like, life is hard, then all of a sudden, like, it's almost like you lock in particles where you're going to experience life is hard. But that could be with anything. Like, you call somebody this or that, and whatever you say, you're going to prove yourself right.
Well, there's a couple of things I want to tap into because I love Joe Dispenza, epigenetics. I'm not I wouldn't say as studied with it, but I think I understand some of the premises and whatnot, and I believe in it. Have you gotten any kickback in regards to the Christmas light analogy in regards to how stress can be kind of like a signal that may cause disease or cause XYZ or cause whatever we may go through? Because I've always brought up, how people always say, or said for the longest time, okay, cancer runs in my family, or so-and-so got this disease, it was just, luck of the draw, and it's unfortunate they got that. And then what I've listened to, and correct me if I'm wrong, and heard, it's like, yes, it's not exactly always that reason where it's just genetic and it just happens to get it, but it is in fact ignited by stress, like these tangible diseases that may pop up. But I feel like it's sometimes comes off as insensitive when people do have that train of thought of saying, oh, it's just luck of the draw, it runs in the family, and they're not leaning on the other side that you're saying where it can be caused by stress. Do you ever get kickback on that in regards to some people believing that it's just, luck of the draw, runs in the family?
I think they call it practicing medicine for a reason. I think doctors, there's studies, and for every study, eventually, it seems like something debunks it, right? Like another study comes and says, oh, red wine was apparently really good, and now they're like, no, it's not good at all. So I think that, I'm not a doctor or a trained therapist. I'm just kind of going by my experience on my personal story with cancer, and obviously what I've learned from the quantum field, experts per se, right? If you can say. And I've had a lot of conversations with people, whether it's ALS or MS, and a lot of them, it's weird. They all seem to remember something emotionally that happened that triggered it. It's something like a knowing, They just, when you say that, just to clarify, they're not getting a specific diagnosis saying that caused that. It's just like they start cognitively thinking about that. Yeah, they all kind of knowingly know that something emotionally happened to them that detonated it.
Got it.
And of course, I'm just going by the conversations that I've had. This is by no way, shape, or form like a rule of thumb.
Of course.
The whole initiative of the book is just how to really present hacks so people are not over stressing themselves out, and with the emphasis of the word. I think that we tend to overcomplicate very innocently our lives by very powerfully declaring things like things are hard, I'm not good enough, all these kind of survival thoughts that seem to be rampant in our culture. I think as a culture, we've normalized complaining to each other. It's like I come to you, I'm like, how's it going, David? You're like, God. And it's interesting because a lot of times we think that we're bonding with people when we complain, but I give the analogy, it's almost like we're doing drugs together. If we feel good at the moment, it's like, my boss is a nightmare. But if you knew that by you describing your boss as a nightmare keeps him or her occurring as a nightmare, would you still do it? Mm-hmm. That becomes a question.
Yeah, and so I want to ask you in regards to that, because you're putting power into the words, of course, and that makes sense. Like whenever I've read or listened to certain people, let's say it's like like Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, or Think and Grow Rich, a lot of those, which essentially are talking about epigenetics, even though it's not,
they're not calling
it that in Think and Grow Rich per se, but it seems from when I listen to Joe Dispenza or anyone else that kind of preaches the same thing, it's the word, of course, but it's the mind-heart connection that I always hear Dispenza talking about. So it's not just saying the word that can, I guess, create the impact. It's the emotion that you attach to the word that kind of creates that powerful effect, from my understanding, if that's true. So if that's true, please correct me if I'm wrong, connecting the emotion to the feelings, which when you talk about the manifestation, or however you want to say it, or bringing things to life, how important is that emotion? Because like when people start changing their words and their direction, like instead of complaining, or instead of saying, I'm not here yet, or whatever negative connotation you want to say, if you start flipping the script, right, and just want to speak better to yourself or out loud, there is that innate feeling that people are like, I am blind. Like I don't feel that. Like even though I'm saying it because I want to be positive, how do you create that emotion to believe it? Because I feel like without that belief, the words by itself are not enough.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think first we need to detox from the negative words. And then it's almost like if you stop saying life is hard, you're almost going to have no choice than to say life is easy, you know? But it's about being mindful. Like, you know, you and I, we just met up at the elevator and you said, yeah, you know, I can't remember what you said, but you said something's hard. And it's funny, I've been hearing it a lot lately.
Use your imagination, people.
But not in the fun way. Like I've been like we very innocently say like, yeah, you know, it's hard out there to get a job. It's hard. And it's like, I'm not saying you're wrong, but how is that going to help? If words are powerful indeed, right? And we're saying that it's hard out there. And if I ask you, hey, how does it feel? If you really think about it, right? And I'm like, how does it feel to say that it's hard to get a job or hard to monetize or whatever? And if you sit with it and you go, it feels depleting. It feels like I'm out of control. I don't have control. I don't have a grasp, right? So my invitation is like, how about very just easily start switching words around. So instead of saying something's hard, like you can start, it's tricky, you know, like use words that can allow possibilities so we can be pleasantly surprised. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense.
And then once we start doing that, then you'll get to see, maybe you will get to that better word and you'll feel that emotion. So it'll have that, as you were saying, that mind heart connection.
And that's where the repetition comes in.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think people start, including myself at one point, I was like, I feel like I'm saying this just to take that path, even though I might not feel it. And I feel like I'm kind of lying to myself. But I still think that is a good, like you're saying, that is a good step to at least speak to yourself better. Then through repetition, you might start tricking yourself a little bit to eventually evolve into believing it and feeling it. And at a minimum, it's like, even if you don't get deep into the quantum field and that shit, it's like, isn't that just a good path anyway? You know what I mean? Just speak to yourself more lightly, because I think it does add up. It's like chipping into a stone. I forget, I was talking to like my cousin at some point. He was just, whoever it was, I forget who it was, just constantly does talk negative. And I catch myself doing that too, but I like to be cognizant of it. But I'm like, yo, just, you know, it does add up. Like, just as in the positive way of speaking positively, it can add up to going in the right direction. But you think about all the times we do speak negative, they're just like just chipping away at you, and you might get down so deeply subconsciously that it is affecting the way you live your life and what happens without even realizing it. But what is that explanation to people that aren't as in tune with the quantum field and think this is just woo-woo?
I think that, you know, we have a sensitivity to, even culturally, like if somebody goes, how are things going? It's almost like we collapse being humble with negativity or something. I don't know. You know, it's like, how are the sales doing in the book? Oh, they're going good. You know what I mean? Instead of just like, no, they're going great, you know? And I think that, the mindfulness part is one that, whether you know about quantum or epigenetics or nothing, it's just like, if we take a beat and we really consider that words are really powerful, then what are we propagating our life with as far as words, you know? And I think having that moment of pausing, like if your bank account is not doing well, you don't have to say like, I'm rich, right? But you also don't have to call all your friends and tell them that you're broke. You know, you could just be like, how are things going? You know, they're sorting themselves out. What does that mean? That, you know, everything is sorting itself out.
And even if you are saying that generally, so it's kind of like the middle ground, like you're not lying to yourself or them, and you're not being negative, but is it like coupled with, while you're saying that in your head, saying maybe those words, like it's not I am rich, but like more positive affirmations in your own head? Like, what is the balance of saying that, but remaining overtly positive, if that makes sense? Like, what is the internal dialogue when you say that? Is it the same thing?
I think it's like, you know, you could be having a bad day and somebody like, hey, how's life? And you could say, you know, life is lifey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's got to work for you. I mean, I'm not in your head. I'm not in anybody's head. But I know that there is a lot of times for me a knee-jerk reaction that I want to go into that survival conversation of like, because we're so trained. It's almost, like I said, I think it's very cultural to form relatedness and bonding over our chaos, or like, oh, well, it's almost like we get like a gold star in human interaction when we commiserate over our issues. It's like, it's like there's no money out there, the recession or the political. But I go into it really, I take a deep dive in the book because we're wired. Look, you got to understand something, David. Our brains are not built to make us happy. They're built to survive. We're the descendants of, no one left Europe because it was a little chilly or wherever and got here. We left because either somebody killed or got killed or betrayed, so you and I are essentially the descendants of people that did some fucked up shit.
Yeah. And
so now imagine, now we're here, built to survive, carrying probably a lot of generational guilt. But we're not surviving anymore. We're not dying of tetanus, or we're not dying of, women are, for the majority, they're not dying at childbirth, but we're still wired with this survive. But the new survival is, what am I going to do with it? For how am I going to monetize my business? I didn't get that job and my friend got that job. I'm getting older, whatever it is, Amazon Prime came late. Like, that's our new survival. And I also think that because we are at a time where there's so much technology and we are kind of overstimulated. So we're seeing it, our attention span is slow. So my invitation is that we need to do something to counteract that, the speed of life right now. And meditation, which I know you're big on. Meditation it definitely helps because it goes right. You go into the brain, you go into the hardware of the brain, and you balance out your nervous system. So that way you could take on the shut the fuck up method, because when someone cuts you off, you're gonna have that moment. You know what happened to me yesterday? I kid you not. This was amazing. I was driving. I was on the phone, but I was on the speaker. I was talking to the charity that I'm doing this event with. And I'm talking to the person. All of a sudden, I guess the car in front of me made a left, and he took my side, my side rear view, my side mirror.
Yeah.
And he nicked it. And the thing, I couldn't tell if it fell, but David, I didn't have any knee jerk, nothing. It was like nothing. And I was talking to her on the phone, but I'm like, hey, great, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And I hung up, and I'm like, okay. I parked the car. I went back. The truck kept going. Anyway, I found the parts on the floor, like it was plastic. I put it right back in the car. Nothing happened. I mean, it's worked. It didn't break, but it shocked me how I've really gotten to a point of so much rewiring. And I give so much credit to the meditation work that I've done and using the shut the fuck up method, where like I didn't have to go through that abuse that normally we would go through. Oh shit! Like telling her, like, what happened? I'm like, oh, a car just hit. You see what I'm saying? Like driving all these cortisol and stress hormones to finally get to a place of like, oh man, I got lucky. You know what I mean? Yes. I skipped that whole thing, and after it was all done, I was like, wow, I didn't even flinch. And that's what the work is.
And it's kind of ties into what we were talking about pre-recording in regards to how I think it's going to tie back together, I believe. Give me a second. How your grief and loss and the experience of your parents kind of was a triggering aspect of the book, right? Maybe
it was a catalyst.
It was a catalyst for this. And I think everything you're saying, even though you're starting it off saying your experience came from grief or the inspiration catalyst, but everything you're telling me, back to what we were talking about pre-recording, these are all methods. This is a method that applies to life. It's not just if you lost someone, use this or blah, blah, blah. It's just like, it's across the board. I feel like a generic method that you can, not generic in the sense of what you're doing, but like it can apply to just whatever you're going through. I love that so much. It's kind of what we were just talking about. But I know you just explained it, glazed over what the shut the fuck up method is, but like, what are you saying in this book exactly outside of what you've already told me? Like you said, there's 10 commandments.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So basically the 10 commandments are, I focus on the power of the word, speaking clean, right? So, and I do some comedy. So I was like, I'm going to make this kind of my style. So like the first one is like, thou shalt not talk shit about anyone. And if thou does, thou will use my friend instead of their name. So how can we create anonymity when we tell stories? Because again, we very innocently kill people's characters all the time, and we don't even realize. Like, if I tell a story about you to somebody else, I'm already creating a preconceived notion about David. But if I don't use your name, or like, I bring up this example all the time. If you and I have Mary as a friend in common, right? And every time I hang out with Mary, Mary's tight in the wallet. Mary's cheap, right? But we're all friends. The minute that I tell you, hey, David, you know what? Mary's so cheap, bro. Like, now I just infected you with that. So now subconsciously you're going to be looking for it, and then you're going to find it. And then you're going to turn to me and be, you know what, George, you're right. She is cheap. And now I can have that dynamic with Mary, but I can also be my brother's keeper because I love you and I want you to have a good experience. So why do I need to tell you that? Just to create camaraderie? You see what I'm saying? So I know I'm not doing it I'm not evil to get Mary down, but it's how about taking a beat before I share something about someone that's defaming or killing off their character.
Yeah, I personally can't stand when someone gives me a basic, like maybe generic positive stuff, like, oh, she's nice, he's nice. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
For the most part. But like anything like specific, I'm like, damn, like it's like when I'm watching a trailer before a movie. It's like, I feel like I saw everything and I have these preconceived notions before actually seeing the movie.
Yeah.
And so I personally can't stand that.
So funny. I love that.
It kind of like, I don't know, even like I have no.
How about somebody goes, she's not, you're like, shh.
Yeah. Seriously.
Like, you know what you do? You put your fingers in their mouth, go, shh.
Yeah, let me just meet him. I don't want to. Let me figure the shit out by myself before. If she's an asshole, I'll tell you she's an asshole. But like, don't tell me she's an asshole before I find out she's an asshole. Anyway, it's
interesting, right? Because if you say like, if I know Mary and you're like, hey, so how is Mary? Just meet her and then you'll figure it out. Immediately, you're like,
just from not even from kind of shutting
up.
Here's
the thing, right? How's Mary? You know, Mary's great. Mary and I could be in a lawsuit.
Yeah.
But if I tell you Mary's great, you're gonna look for that great part.
Yeah.
Now, if you're about to do business with Mary, and I'm in the middle of a lawsuit, you know, my integrity would probably be like, hey, you know what? We're not speaking right now. We are going through a little. We're going through a legal situation right now, and that's just my thing. And let's see what happens. You know what I mean? We could be responsible.
There's tactics.
Yeah, you can be tactful and you can be caring, but it's different. It's like I can have a thing with Mary, but if I go around saying, "Oh my God, be careful with this girl. She's I'm suing her," then that's different. You know.
So that, in regards to the specific title of your book and that one commandment you just told us, you're saying that the book is about the power of word.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting contradiction to the title of the book. So you're telling you to shut up.
Yeah.
But it's about word, which needs you to not shut up.
Yeah.
What's that about?
So, well, the whole, the genesis of the book was because I was sitting in all these seminars and I'm hearing, Dr. Joe talking about how, in quantum physics, when you see the atom and you see the electrons, right, and you look away, the electrons move. Meaning, you as the David observer, it's like the movie. It's actually like the movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, right?
Yeah,
everything is in the quantum.
Movie.
Everything's in the quantum. The minute you observe something, you go, Mary's cheap. You lock in those particles, so you have to be right about it.
So you have to be right about it?
You have to be right about it because you're locking in those particles. So now you're going to start seeing more proof of that.
Guys, so it's a bias?
No, so it's literally your mind energetically locked in something, and now you're going to end up being right about it.
Got it. Okay.
So now, like when I meet somebody that I don't like, I always I laugh and I make a promise to myself, and I'm like, I'm going to be so wrong about you, and I don't have to tell them. In my head, I'm like, I'm going to be so wrong. And you know what? And that doesn't mean we need to be best friends, but in my mind, I'm like, all right, you know what? Maybe they're having a bad day. They came into the room, they didn't say hi. It has nothing to do with me. I create a whole ecosystem where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to create stories about this person and make it about me, because this person is actually bringing into light all those, like my judgment, my arrogance, everything that I don't see when a friend is like, hey, someone great. You know what I mean? Like an enemy or someone you don't like will show you who you are at the moment and all those things that you have in you. Mm-hmm. It's it's a deeper dive.
Yeah.
I gotta I kind of went off from like the title of the name.
But
basically,
I
look,
was the cause of that one.
the fact that the book is called The Shut the Fuck Up Method. And so anyway, so I was watching Dr. Joe do all these talks about how when you look at something, you observe it, you call it out, and then we go on break, and I would see people just complaining and gossiping, how's they, oh God, this is taking too long, or like I don't like my chair, and I was like, oh my God, you're listening. It's almost like you're listening to all this amazing information, then you're not applying it. Mm-hmm. So then, as a joke, I told a friend, I'm like, man, if I ever write a spiritual book, it's gonna be called "Shut the Fuck Up," and that's kind of how it started, as a joke. But the book itself, it's almost like a Trojan horse. That the title is provocative,
yes,
but inside it's the most like loving book that will hold space for everyone. Because I do at the core, David, I believe that everyone is right. Everyone gets a pass, because how could I possibly judge you when you came in with all these genetic predispositions and culture and social and what happened to your father, what happened to your life, and now you're this action figure, and here I am like, I don't like the way that you do this. You've been with you, for over 30 years, whatever. You should do it this other way. And it's almost like it's arrogance, right? For us to look at even anyone in the political sphere and be like, oh, they should be different. Like it's just not possible. They are who they are. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And I wonder, what is your opinion on, of the 10 Commandments? Is there any one that you put more weight than the other?
I think that I have one that I love, which is if you have a problem, if you have a situation, tell one good friend or tell your therapist, and that's it. Ruminating on a problem, again, it comes from our very survival mechanism. You have a problem with somebody, and then you have that knee-jerk reaction of like, hey, how are things? I'll come how are things, David? And you're like, I'm having an issue with my landlord. He wants me out next month, but clearly he can't get me, so now you tell me. So now I know. And then the Uber driver knows. Then you'll tell your mom, then you'll tell your friends. And you know what I mean? It's like, then we're creating almost like a network of conversations about our problems. And then not only that, then we're known for our problems. So we essentially, there's a chapter called Be Your Own Publicist, because it's a story about, a friend of mine and I talking about another friend that has now a girlfriend, and he moved in, and she was like, oh my God, he was so lucky in love. Are you sure? And I'm like, oh my God. And then I remembered that he would tell everybody of how every girl in LA was no good and they all wanted his money. And I'm like, wow, it's funny how he architected his own story. And then we get mad when people talk shit about us, but we're the ones that told everybody about the issues that we had. So how about, and again, it doesn't need to be just one person, but imagine if you tell one or two or three people max, but you're really mindful about it. And imagine if I have an issue and I call you up, and I do this actually. If I have a problem, I'll call you up and I go, David, you're my number. You're the only person I'm going to tell this to. You're my one person. And I let it rip, and you hold space for me, and we cry, and then I'm done. And then I don't have to go around telling anybody else anymore, because I didn't repress. I was just mindful about it. Yeah,
I wonder when we do vent and we talk, because I was in that situation, like when I was going through my breakup over a year ago, I feel like it kept coming up, and I caught myself, like, why do I keep saying the same shit to so many people because I have a lot of close friends, and it comes up, so I want to be honest with them. But eventually I was like, all is good. Like, we don't need to talk. We honestly just don't need to talk about it.
And I bet you felt like and then the brain doesn't know the difference between telling a story and going through it. So you would go through the breakup every single time that you would tell people.
And it would come up. Like, I forget who it was I was talking to, but I guess when my East Coast comes out, I start talking faster and faster. Like, they're like, damn, it still got you, huh? I'm like, oh my God, it does. But it's also talking about it so much. It's like a perfect blend, because this whole podcast is about talking about it. But sometimes I just wonder, like, what is that cutoff between where talking about it is healthy and also shutting up and taking the steps and taking the action? You know what I mean? Like, is there a point where, like, maybe what you're talking about, because you've explained it already, but like, is there a blend of just not talking about it and just taking action?
I love this question. That is such a good question.
And whatever taking action means.
No. I think inevitably. Yeah, I think inevitably. What I think that I'm not there yet, by the way.
Which part?
Well, and this is just something I've never really said it before, but I think eventually we could figure out a way that we can self-solve all of our issues internally, and then we're just talking about the things that we want to manifest. I'm not there yet. And what I mean by that is like, you know how you have some friends that are like, oh my, I need to talk to you. I need your advice.
Yes.
Like, I think that eventually, if we become mindful enough, it's almost like we're not going to need that advice because we'll have an issue, and energetically I'll be like, all right, my situation with my contractor needs to get fixed. And then I have the knee-jerk reaction of telling you about it, and you go, you know what? Before I tell David and go through all these emotions of frustration, because I will go through those emotions of frustration when I sit you down and tell you, you feel me? But what if I go, you know what? Let me just give it a beat and focus on other things that are working out in my life, right? Because we're a one focus and we're one focus individual. There's no such thing as multitasking. You go from one thing to one thing to one thing, but I can't have this conversation with you and doing an email at the same time. Like, I'm talking to you. I could do the email, but eventually I'm doing the email and not really talking to you. So I think that if we could eventually have the desire of like, I really want my contractor situation to get sorted out. And then before we know it, almost like matter catches up with energy, and then it gets sorted out and I didn't have to tell you about it. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that I'm not there yet. I still need my one person to talk to about it. And I'm certainly not telling people to repress and tell as many people as you can. There's no right or wrong way. But I know from my personal experience, talking about my problems with a lot of people, it just almost like created more of an ecosystem where I had to clean up all, you know what I mean? It's like you can have a problem with something or someone and then you clean it up. But then if you told 10 people, when you see those people, they're going to be like, hey, so David, so what's up with your ex? Like, you still mad?
Yeah, especially if I get back together with that ex because you told all these people all that bullshit.
Okay, so that's the thing. And a lot of people are like, I have a friend that same thing, like he would get into all these fights with his partner, and then his friends were like, hey, we don't want, and then they would fix it, and they were like, well, no, we don't really want to hang out with him because he did ABC. And then he was like, no, we're cool. And he's like, so then you got to take responsibility that you murdered this person's character to all your friends, and now you're expecting for your friends to be like, oh, everything is fine.
Yeah.
And that's not cool.
Yeah, say less.
Yeah.
But in regards to that, like to the handling it internally, I think that's where not the battle, for lack of better words again, the trickiness is.
The opportunity.
The opportunity. There's so much better words. Is, you try to figure out internally.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, after today, we're going to see the officer, you're going to rebrand your podcast a live talk.
Yeah, a live talk. Maybe dead talks. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be
maybe. We're like a flashing like Vegas, like with
the dead's just blinking the maybes. AB Ed talks. Anyway, I don't know what the hell I was going to say. Oh, it's okay. So the idea of like internalizing and maybe saying less before you talk to someone, which is fine too, you said, but it's like there's a little bit of a battle of wanting to express it more and to say it out loud more to get more perspectives from people because maybe we don't know what the person doesn't know what to do. Like if you're in grief, for example, I don't know what to do, so I need to talk to more people. Maybe because I think by saying it over and over again, we'll get it out, even though maybe by saying it over and over again, you're dwelling on negativity. But I don't know what to do internally, hypothetically. So it's like, how do I figure that out? Is it trusting yourself to figure it out? It's like a balancing act.
So here's the thing, and I love that. I love what you brought up, because I do think the grieving process is very personal, and you need to do what you need to do, right? And
whatever that is.
If you need to call a million people, again, these are just suggestions, by the way.
Yeah, guys,
like,
don't
go out there, like shut your mouth and like go and have a powerful grieving process. But I think at the core, David, I think we're so emotionally addicted to our lives. So what happens is that's why the problem that you have with someone, you have it with different people, because energetically we attract those dynamics so we can go through the roller coaster of emotions that our life is used to. You see, the brain is like the most efficient computer. And what it does, it's recycling like 70,000 thoughts a day, right? Genetic thoughts, environmental thoughts, what happened to you in sixth grade thoughts. So the brain doesn't necessarily want to learn new skills because it almost like uses more fuel when it learns new things. So it just wants to keep recycling. When you keep hacking it, by being mindful, then you're creating new pathways in your brain. So you're creating essentially new destinies for yourself. So again, nothing wrong with complaining, but you are going to stay stuck in your certain loops if you do. You know what I mean?
Just simply by the way we talk to each other, like outside of like this, just even just dumb it down, even just outside of steps you could take, it's like that first step is literally just being more cognitive and more thoughtful on how we speak to ourselves, how we speak out loud.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to the things that you say. Listen when you say like, "Oh, something's hard. Life is hard." Like that's powerful, man. When you say life is hard, like it's almost like you're cementing all that energy. So you get then you're going to be proven right that it is hard.
Because you're locking onto that.
You're locking in those particles that life is hard. I mean, again, you don't have to say life is easy, but you don't have to say anything at all.
Yeah, life is lifing.
Yeah, life is life.
Life
is life.
This is life.
Life is life, dude. And before you know it, like you're gonna, and then also, I think meditation, gratitude practice. I'm sorry. And listen, I do it every single morning. It's not like I wake up and it's like fucking birds chirping outside. Like, it's morning. It's like, all right, here we go, but I grab my journal, which I gave you one, and I write 4 or 5 things that I'm grateful for. And so it's like you start using the conditioning that we have in our brain. So you win this life thing. So it's a much gentler path.
And what is your explanation from your understanding of like the actual science and quantum field of those words and the power? Like, what is your understanding of, okay, by changing the words, instead of saying life is hard, say life is tricky, what is that actually doing? Like if you try to understand it scientifically, are you able to explain that?
Well, that's what the experts say, that it creates new pathways in the brain because you're hacking the machine. So so the brain is used to saying life is hard, and now you're saying life is tricky. It's like, you're literally creating a new pathway where like now you're seeing life as like, oh, life is like, I'll give you an example. I'm a Libra. So our thing has always been like, it's hard to make decisions. It's hard. So in my mind, like you want to take me to my worst nightmare, take me to the Cheesecake Factory menu, right? Because that menu is like the Bible. So it's like literally as I'm ordering something, I'm crying because I got the wrong thing.
They got good jambalaya, actually.
I'm like, no. So I'm like, and I used to take on too many choices as like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do is really almost, for me, it's really disempowering. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. But now I've switched the I don't know what to do to like, you know what? I haven't made up my mind yet. I'm waiting. The universe keeps showing me like paths, and I'm learning a lot. Like, for example, before I published my book, I was debating whether self-publish or I was talking to an agent. Mm-hmm. And for every time that I was like, all right, I'm going to do it with the agent, then all of a sudden I would run into a friend that's self-published that was like, oh my God, no, you got to do it yourself. It's so easy. You go to Amazon, you make more money, whatever. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to self-publish. And then I would run into another friend. I was like, oh, no, you need to go through a publisher. It's so fun when they start bidding on your book. You don't want to make, and I'm like, all right. And then finally, so I kept telling myself, you know what, this isn't, I don't know what to do conversation, but this is more like, ooh, I'm learning. I'm learning all about self-publishing, and I'm learning all about going through an agent. So I took away that context of it. I don't know what to do. And eventually the universe showed me really clear that I wanted to self-publish. And now I'm like, thank God I did it. Mm-hmm. I'm going kind of through a similar one about moving to Miami early next year. I have a place in Miami. I love LA, but it's been 20 years. I'm moving out of my house. They're actually tearing it down. And it's the perfect time to leave, but yet I'm letting the universe unfold a little more about what I should do. And there's nothing wrong with that.
So what about this catalyst that you explained to your parents? Like I know you said that inspired it, but what in particular? Like what were you going through that caused you to take these steps for yourself? Like, did you apply these for yourself, and what were you going through?
Yeah, I think eventually, essentially, both parents died of cancer pretty back to back. Dad was 67, mom was 70, right? That's young.
And by the way, I will put those links for his prior episodes if you want to go back to that. Go on.
Yeah, don't miss out my saga.
Yeah. It's a trilogy.
So
right?
I have a trilogy. This is like
Star Wars.
Yay. No, but what was the Return of the Jedi? This is Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
the first two.
You're the Jedi?
So I'm the Jedi. I'm back. Right. So I'm not gonna lie. It was a bit of a, both parents died from cancer. You're kind of like, oh, wow, what does that mean genetically? You know, like the world started like, well, you better start. And I swear to God, David, I've come to a place with my genetic predisposition. I'm like, no, I'm going to be so cognitive of how I carry my nervous system that I'm not going to be triggering any diseases like that. It just like yesterday, the freaking mirror thing came off and it was like nothing. And that's where I get to pat myself on the back and I'm like, wow, I've really transformed even a knee-jerk reaction. Like anybody I think if you would ask, most people would have flinched, right? Or at least hung up the phone or panicked. And I didn't panic. There was no panic, no wrongdoing, no anything. Just kind of like, okay, well, let me go and pick up the piece and handle it, you know? So I feel like my parents took me on the deep dive of learning more about epigenetics and getting into, you know, quantum studies, which it resonates with me so much because it's such a deep dive. It's so much deeper. It's like the movie, it's like The Matrix. It's almost like I don't get that much pleasure anymore as I used to from getting what I want. I get more pleasure out of seeing who I am when I don't get what I want.
Yeah, the response.
Yeah, the response. When I go to bed at night, I'm like, oh my God, I sat through that whole traffic and I was calm, or I didn't get that deal happen. The venue said no, and I'm like, okay, another one will come. Is that trust? I'm not running on emergency anymore, but I do think there's some detoxification that we all have to do, which is through meditation, because I do think that we're wired heavily to survive.
And in your meditation practice, I've heard so many different tactics. Are you talking to yourself in your head, or is it focusing on breath?
No, what I do is I do the GAV, the gratitude affirmation visualization. So I write 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for, that I want to affirm, literally like I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm generous. And then 3 things that I'm visualizing, whether it's a job, a vacation, health, fitness, whatever. And then I go into a guided 15-minute gratitude practice. For all of you out there that don't meditate, go to YouTube and find a free 5-minute guided meditation, you know, baby steps.
Yes.
But even just thinking that you're doing something about it and committing yourself to a consistent practice, it's going to transform you, because you know how we're all wired to believe practice makes perfect? Mm-hmm. Use that same wiring to make you win on this meditation conversation. Mm-hmm. Like start with 5 minutes, and what if you're that guy that did it for 7 days consecutively? You're going to be like, wow, I'm that guy. Therefore, all of a sudden, somebody cuts you off on the 405, and you got mad for 2 minutes instead of your usual 10 or hour.
Yeah, I mean, I had that moment. I mean, it's not getting my rear view mirror plucked off or a little more dangerous. But I remember when I flew to Europe in September, I got off the plane. I knew I had my laptop, and it was gone. I couldn't find my laptop. I was literally the last one on the plane, looking in the crevices. I knew I brought my laptop. It was gone. I couldn't find my laptop. I just arrived to this trip I was taking in Europe by myself for a couple of weeks. I was like so excited. And as soon as I got off, I'm like, all right, my laptop's gone. I was like, that sucks, but all right. Maybe I shouldn't have said that sucks, but I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Except the only thing I can do
surrendered.
is I surrendered. I was like, okay, I'm going to submit a claim, and then I'm going to go on. Yeah. And you know what happened? 3 weeks later, I got an email from Heathrow in London. Hey, we found your missing item. I was like, wait, okay, I could have.
David, you nailed it. Like the more that we just surrender and trust. I mean, my whole book is like airport stories of like missing my flight, getting stuck, 3-hour wait to get an airport voucher. Like airports for me that's where it's my training ground.
Yeah.
And and on this last one, going to Barcelona, I got stuck in Frankfurt, and the next day the flight kept getting delayed, and it was the last another hour, and then I'm like, I was about to get really irritated, and I'm like, you know what? Perfect. Let me pull out my laptop and I'll get to do my planning, like the book launch. I'm like, I'm going to start working on this. And all of a sudden, the minute that I'm like, no, I'm not going to let this outside situation, environment, right? Because it's your environment, take a hold of me. And I took the laptop out immediately. They're like, oh, no, never mind. We're leaving in 5 minutes. Mm. But there's something that happens when we surrender and we let go of the control, that things go our way, right?
That's the thing, is the control. And I think when obviously more extravagant things happen in regards to life outside of losing a laptop or losing a rearview mirror, it can be more tricky, but it's the same method. It goes across the board from like A to Z. It's like I think there is intensity levels, of course, and the things that happen in our life. There is a hierarchy to like more challenges, but it is the same method of that surrender. And that, as hard as that is to say, if you lose someone in your life or a breakup or lost your job, that can be some heavy stuff. but it is the same idea of like surrendering. And it's just realizing like, okay, this happened, and there's certain things that just happen, and you literally, you can't, if something happened, unless you have a friggin' time machine, you can't do, there's nothing you can do about that event happening. So it's like, what can you do moving forward? There are options, but it's like, I think we get so hung up on that happened. You start dwelling about why that happened. Oh my God, this happened. But it's like, it's just, I think the surrender is kind of synonymous with acceptance, even though the word acceptance gets thrown around so loosely.
Yeah. I think that, again, I break down the steps in the book because having, right now you're having, the subconscious mind, right? And studies show that it runs 95% of what we do. So right now we're having a 5% conversation. So right now we can have these great talks and epiphanies about, oh my God, it's letting go of control. But if you get on your car right now, somebody cuts you off, the subconscious is going to take over. So we have to go to the hardware through meditation to kind of clean up all and detoxify from how emotionally charged we are. So then these epiphanies can then really land.
Right, and like you said with the work, it's just like going to the gym. You go to the gym, like you go to the gym for a day and do biceps. Your biceps aren't going to be huge tomorrow, but if you do this little tiny work day by day, with the speak to yourself better, say little words, and I might not notice it, but then 4 months from now, all of a sudden, like, oh, damn, look at those veins in my biceps. Like, it worked from repetition and constantly doing it. So I think, especially this day and age with everything we do, it's like we just that instant gratification. Our attention spans are getting worse and worse. So it's like, it does take time. This isn't like a light switch of a thing, but it does take work and effort.
Yeah, it's the practice. It's literally just
practice,
like the gym.
Exactly.
It's the practice. It's the consistency and the practice. And it's just, I mean, from my experience, it just gets easier and easier. And the beauty is when, your environment is everything, right? And what I mean by the environment is like, dealing with having money or no money is the environment. A physical ailment is the environment. Getting a rejection letter is an environment. It's like, how can we overcome that environment and be like, and trust?
Yeah.
But I think to get to that level of trust, we need to do some detoxification.
Did you write this book for any particular type of people in regards to certain scenarios?
I wanted to make a book that really dumbed down a lot of the scientific kind of jargon. I love the scientific jargon, but I have, friends of mine that love Bruce Lipton and Dr. Joe, but they don't understand it. So I was like, okay, so how can I take somebody from like training wheels, baby steps, all the way to a black diamond, So literally I take you from like the issues that you have with your coworkers and your boss all the way to, how chaos is the most normal thing in the world. And out of chaos comes order. Out of the biggest chaos in the world, which was the Big Bang, the universe was created. So if you look at a jar and you with a microscope and you look at cells and you look deeper, you're going to find bacteria in chaos. Out of that bacteria, a cell is created. Then out of that cell, a tissue is created, a body part is created, an organ is created, and a human is created.
Wild shit.
Yeah. So essentially, we come from chaos. So I'll give you a more everyday example. You're renovating your home. If you're in the middle of your home renovation, you walk in and you take a screen grab, that's chaos. What are you going to be like, oh my God, look at the floor, look at that there. But guess what? Out of that chaos is your turnkey home. Mm-hmm. So we have to let things have their chaotic process because the order will come from it.
I mean, I couldn't have said that any better. And it is amongst the chaos. It just seems like chaos. But I think if you have that trust, like you said, surrender a little bit and trust that with all chaos, it settles. It does settle.
And that doesn't mean that you condone the chaos either. Like, for example, today I'm going to volunteer at Hollywood Food Coalition. We feed the homeless community, right? Like, if I'm feeding the homeless and I'm looking at them like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that could have happened. This is so fucked up. And LA is not taking care of them. There's no housing. Then I'm doing them a disservice and I'm doing me a disservice. But if I give it an empowering context, right? So if I'm looking at them and I'm going, you know what? For all I know, they could be reaching nirvana after this lifetime. Who knows? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? We don't know. We don't know any of it. And I'm like, and also because of them, I get to express a part of myself that I love, which is being of service. Because right now, if somebody came into the room and asked you and me, what would you rather be, of service or be someone that needs help and service? Yeah. We would both be, we want to help. But guess what? Then both of us don't get to do what we love. So in a way, that homeless person gets me to be the person that I want to be. So they're the ones doing me a favor. You see what I'm saying? And by the way, that doesn't mean that I condone homelessness or think there's something fundamentally wrong with it, but I'm actually seeing the gift of being able to help someone and also the gift of perspective, right? So here I am wanting XYZ cars, anything, where I'm like, you know what? How about I just appreciate that I can breathe?
Yeah.
And I have a roof over my head.
That's beautiful, man. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on here. For everyone that doesn't know, we're dear friends, and if there's any opportunity, I'm just going to say a sharp. Give me that book. I want to get a little FaceTime with this baby. I remember you telling me, about this and that you're doing it now. It's cool to actually see it. Like I'm holding it in my hand. That's the beautifulness.
You're gonna read it for the next 11 hours or something.
I'm gonna have 22 hours to be honest, going there and back. So if I can't finish this on 2 flights, then I'm illiterate or something's wrong. Yeah, that's why I have a podcast. I'm not reading any slides right now.
Well, then you'll just buy the audiobook.
Yeah. Did you read it yourself?
Yeah.
It's your voice?
Are you kidding me?
Did you guys hear that sexy voice? If you want to buy the book, seriously, guys, he's a dear friend of mine, and obviously I have any opportunity to, there's a reason why he's been on here before he wrote a book. Obviously, you have a lot of great things to say.
And obviously, I didn't even have anyone dying this time.
I know, yeah, that's the thing. It's a little bit more of an uplifting conversation. See, the podcast is maybe Detox is evolving. But I'm gonna put maybe Detox. There we go. This is recalibrating everything. You know, a quick story.
As long as it's a picture of you like this.
So this is chaos right now. You know Zoltaire? You ever seen the movie Big? That prophet. For those that don't know, there's like this arcade guy that you pay $2 and he gives you like a fortune. I did it yesterday at the Grove in LA. Oh my God. And literally the bastard told me I'm too talkative. I'm like, I have a podcast host, and Zoltaire told me I'm too talkative, but I should shut the fuck up. That's what I'm trying to get at. So long story short, guys, I'm gonna put the link in the description, or you just look it up.
On Amazon.
I don't know if I'm gonna get any ad play on this because of how many times we're saying the F word, but please check out the link, support the book. If you liked anything you said, if you heard us prior to 2 episodes, I would love if you guys considered purchasing this book. The link's going to be in the description. And, as he told me prior recording, there's a lot of love in this book. And from one to co-sign this man, I feel the love within my fingertips right now. No pun intended. And I just want to thank you for being on here. And guys, buy the book, okay? Buy the book. This is a free sponsorship over here. But I really appreciate you jumping on the show again. The door's always open for you.
Thank you, buddy. You're the best.
I appreciate it. All right, till next time, guys. Maybe Dead Talks. We'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. That'll give you updates as to when we post a new video, more episodes, and more content in general. We are streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and all that. And also find us on Instagram at Dead Talks Podcast or www.deadtalks.net. Thank you so much.